Hello everyone and welcome to another lesson in Android programming. Today we're going to start looking at custom views. Specifically, we're going to create our own view and then use a canvas object to draw to it ourselves. Now this view is going to be operating on the main UI thread, unlike some of the other things we'll be looking at in the future. However, for this particular lesson, we're just interested in creating our own custom view and then using the canvas object that gets passed to us to draw to the screen. So let's go ahead and start with a new project, File, New Project, and let's call this Custom View. Hit Enter. I'm going to be using API 17. We're not going to be doing anything particularly interesting, so you shouldn't need to force it to a later version. Let's go ahead and hit Next. We'll be using an empty activity, and main activity is fine. In the first part of this video, we're going to set up our custom view and then load it into our activity as the only view we have. Following that, we are then going to try to remove the title bar as well as make sure that our view is locked to one of the screen orientations. When you're working with your own custom canvases, one of the most common things to do with it is to make games. First, let's start with that custom view. Let's go over to Java, into our package, right-click, New, Java Class. We're going to call this Java class Custom View. And then under Superclass, type View, give Android a second, and then choose the Android.View class as its superclass. Hit OK. Now we should have our new class right here, a new custom view that extends view. We're going to immediately get an error indicating that we do not have a default constructor. So let's go ahead. I'm going to hold down Alt and Insert and then go to constructor. There are many different types, and depending upon how you plan on using this view, for instance, if you plan on creating your own XML variation of it and make a widget that you can use inside of your layouts, you're going to want to make sure you include this attribute adders area over here. For our particular view, though, we're going to be attaching it at runtime inside of the onCreate of our activity, so we can just choose just a standard view that requires a context passed into it. Going to hit OK. There we are. We don't need to do anything right now with this custom view. If you did need to do any sort of initialization, of course, this would be a great place to do it. But for right now, we're just going to call the superclass and be done with it. This in itself will produce nothing. If we go over to our main activity, open this up and take a look inside, what you're going to notice is at the moment we're creating, we're inflating the r.layout main activity layout file under our resources layout folder, which is right here. At the moment, this just has a hello world text. So if we were to run this activity on a phone or other device, we're just going to get that layout. Instead, we want to utilize our custom view as the layout. So let's create a new instance of our custom view. There we are. And of course, this requires the context being the parent class of our activity class. Therefore, we can pass this as the context. If we go ahead and hit run right now, not a whole lot's going to happen. Hitting the run button here and bringing my device over in just a moment. Here we are with our new activity with our view inflated. You'll notice it's not, of course, the view in the layout. It is just a completely blank window. And that's because we're not doing anything right now to override how this view is going to draw to the screen. So nothing is being drawn to the screen. Let's make that happen now. Go back to our custom view, and within here, hold down Alt and Insert. We're going to use override methods or Control O, hit Enter, and start typing onDraw. There we are, onDraw method. We're going to override this method. Right now it's just the default version of it, which is why nothing is showing up on the screen. So with onDraw, we're going to get returned to us a canvas object. And it's that canvas object we're going to use to draw to our screen. We're going to get rid of using the superclass to perform any draws. And let's go ahead and just make the screen show up some form of color to make sure that this is working. So let's do canvas. Within the canvas, we have lots of two-dimensional drawing functions that are going to assist us with drawing to the screen. Right now in this video, we're just going to use the most basic, which is draw RGB. However, in the follow-up video, we're going to talk about how we can make things like a star field or draw with bitmaps, as well as use many of these other functions to create interesting effects, such as polygonal objects and so forth. That being said, let's just do draw RGB. So there's draw RGB, and there's also draw A RGB. A, of course, meaning alpha, meaning you're only drawing a certain amount to that screen. And it's going to be blended with all the other assets that are also drawn on that screen. Right now, we're just doing draw RGB. So what we're doing here is we're going to flush the entire screen basically with a flat color. So let's just use the color green for now. This is going to be using 0 to 255. Hopefully you're familiar with how colors work, but they are 8 bits. With 8 bits you get a value between 0 and 255. So each one of these is 8, 8, and 8. Within decimal, that's a value between 0 and 255. So 255 would be what we'd put for full intensity. I'm going to put a 0 for red, a 255 for green, and a 0 again for blue. Let's go ahead and hit run now. Because we haven't made drastic changes to our application, we can use the quick run here, symbolized by the lightning bolt, to very quickly update the code to our device and see the results. So here in just a few seconds, we can see our view now is fully green. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting by randomizing the color drawn to the screen each time. Now another thing we need to do with a custom view is we need to make sure that we invalidate what's going on with the screen. If we don't invalidate the screen, there's no reason for the view to know it needs to update. Therefore, you will not see a change. So let's call the invalidate command right below that. That will force a redraw as soon as possible on the GUI thread. Now to see that though, we need to use some randomness. So we're going to create a new random is equal to, random is equal to a new random object. I'm going to hit Alt and Enter to bring that class in over here in my import statements. Coming back down, we can now use this random object to grab values between the range of 0 and 255. So if I use next int n, we can grab a value up to but not including the highest one. So I will go ahead and grab that, and that right there. So this will randomly be seeding me values between 0 and 255, integer values that are going to be used to create different colors. We then invalidate the screen, issuing that Android should be redrawing the screen at this point. Moving this on over, hitting the run button again, and now, just going to warn you, this is a lot of flashing colors, random colors flashing up on the screen every time, and because we're constantly pushing this invalidate, it's constantly being refreshed on our screen. We have a couple problems. Typically when you're drawing to a screen like this, you're using something like a game or a simple application, and for one, you usually want to make sure that the user can't rotate the view. Rotating the view, of course, by default normally deletes the activity or destroys it, and then you have to create everything again and store all your variables. It's probably better for us not to do that in some cases. Instead, we can utilize the sensor orientation of the device to make sure that this doesn't happen, or that is to force the user to keep things in a certain order or orientation. So let's go over here to our manifest. So coming on to our activity right here, let's go ahead, hit enter, and let's do Android : and here we have screen orientation. Hit enter and we have the following ones. Of particular note though are the sensor versions: sensor landscape and sensor portrait. Now sensor portrait for some reason doesn't appear to work on many devices. I found that it's not implemented properly at all, and it locks the screen to only one view, or that is, if we bring over my screen over here, if you use sensor portrait, if you rotate your screen 180 degrees upside down in portrait mode, it still doesn't rotate the view. However, sensor landscape, if you were to rotate your view either 90 degrees to the left or 90 degrees to the right from portrait, you end up having the view get flip-flopped. That is, the view itself, the activity is not destroyed. Instead, it preserves it, but you can only have your orientation either on the side, on this side, or of course this side up here. That's what we're going to be using right now. Let's do sensor landscape. Okay. Now, because we've made a change to the manifest, it's going to force us to make sure we do the slow kind of update. We can't use the quick update inside of Android Studio. So we're going to have to do the cold one. So here we are on the side view. Let's rotate that actually this way. And then when our application begins, there we are. We can see that it's now only sideways. Let's rotate that so we can see what's going on. Now, if I continue to rotate this view, actually, it's not going to let me do it that way, is it? Yeah, it's just going to let me, it can't do it that way. Anyway, if you try it on your own device and rotate it so that the top is up here and the bottom is down here, you should notice that this will flip around and the activity will not be destroyed when you do this. All right, that being said, let's move on. The next thing we need to do is get rid of this pesky title bar up here at the top. This is just taking screen real estate away from us. So coming back in here, what we need to understand is that currently we're using the app compat activity library. If you're just using the standard activity library, it's far easier for you to manipulate this and ultimately make this work. And you do this simply by going into your manifest right here, and you would choose, instead of the Android:theme at style app theme, you would use the Android:theme Android:style/theme.noTitleBar.Fullscreen, or something that would look kind of like this. Android:theme is equal to, and it would be, actually, you know what, let's just get rid of that line for right now. And in this case, it would be at Android:style/theme.noTitleBar.Fullscreen. However, if you try to use this theme when you're utilizing the app_compat activity version, this will cause your activity to crash. Let's see that actually happen now. I'll bring this over. Let's hit run. As you can see, the app crashes. If we go down to our errors over here and monitor what occurred, we can see the last one we had, going to errors only on this particular activity, fatal exception in main, scrolling down a little bit, something about a custom view, going down further, a little bit further, and here it is, caused by Java. Anyway, illegal state exception. You need to use a theme.app_compat theme or descendant with this activity because we're using the app_compat libraries. Okay, so that means we need to do a little bit more work, especially inside of our manifest. So I'm going to undo that really quick, and we'll go back to the old theme. There we are, getting rid of this as well. Perfect. We're going to have to define our own style to work with this. So let's go over to our values folder and double click on styles.xml. Within here, we're going to define our own individual style for our project. So let's start by defining the style tag, and then we're going to need a name. This name is going to be theme.app_compat.light.noActionBar.Fullscreen, because that's the kind of theme we're going to be using. We could name this anything we want to, but in this case, we're going to be working with the app_compat stuff. It's going to use the light theme instead of dark, and we're not going to have an action bar, and this is expected to be for full screen usage. Hitting enter, we now need to define the parent of this theme so that we don't have to do everything ourselves. Defining the parent means we get to take all that style information from another theme and use it to our advantage. The theme we're going to be working with is, of course, the style/theme.app_compat.light.noActionBar. That is, we're inheriting all that greatness from that no action bar that we couldn't use before to make our life a little bit easier. However, we are going to define a few differences. The first difference we're going to define is that we need to make sure that the Android:window no title is equal to true, so that this way we do not have a title for our app. Now we're going to define that we do not want an action bar with another item. Name is equal to, and let's do Android:window action bar, and that's going to be false, so that we're not going to have an action bar. Next up is that we want full screen, item, name is equal to Android:window full screen, and that is going to be true. And the last thing we're going to do is disable any window content overlay. Android:window content overlay, we don't want anything, so manifest, and we're going to utilize that style. This one right here, this one right here, instead of the one we were working with before. So let's do at style. There we are. Now let's go ahead and hit run. Clear out those errors. Perfect. Let's go ahead and go back home. And that ends this simple video about first just setting up the most basic of custom views, working with the onDraw method to draw whatever we want to, making sure we invalidate, and then of course going into our manifest as well as defining our own custom style so that we can fill the entire screen with content and information. In the next video, we're going to look at using the canvas method to draw different things on the screen, using things like, of course, points, lines, and so forth to get interesting shapes to show up. See you then. So long. Bye.